I'm not sure we're going to get a satisfactory resolution to the voter fraud problem because no matter how much evidence emerges, they just keep saying, but there's no evidence of widespread voter fraud. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do the analogy again because I want to make it very simple for anybody who hasn't heard this. It is not the responsibility of Trump and his legal team to do a full-scale investigation of the voting process or an audit. They call for an audit based on evidence to see if there is widespread voter fraud. But the media keeps saying no evidence of widespread voter fraud, no evidence of substantial voter fraud that could have changed the outcome of the election. There's no evidence of widespread voter fraud because you're ignoring the actual evidence of fraud. Here's a story from Just the News. 2 charged in Los Angeles for submitting thousands of fraudulent voter registration applications. The fraudulent applications were allegedly on behalf of homeless people. What's that? We've caught more fraud? Okay, let's do the analogy. Let's say you're walking down the street. You're in New York City when all of a sudden you hear a fire alarm. Wank, wank. Or you're like, oh no. So you call 911. I hear a fire alarm going off inside this building at 123 Fake Street. And the 911 operator goes, well, is there widespread evidence that there's fire in this building? Like, is the building burning down? And you're like, well, I mean, I don't see any fire or anything, but there is the alarm going off, which is a sign or indication there may be a fire inside. And they say, we're not going to call the fire department to come out just because the alarm's going off. Let me know if you find widespread fire inside the building. In reality, they would say the alarm's going off. We'll come out. And guess what? I've been in New York when these things have happened. And guess what? I'm in a building and the alarm goes off and I quickly get out of the building. And all these other journalists, when I was working for Fusion, stayed. The fire department runs in full speed. Turns out, false alarm. There was a sign or indication a fire may be happening. They investigated and found nothing. We were all satisfied with the results. Flicked the switch off to reset the alarm and then everything was fine. Or whatever they did. I don't know how the alarm stuff works. I'm assuming there's like a reset button. Right now we have, this evidence right here. We also have this from Matt Brainerd of the Voter Integrity Fund. He says, unreturned ABS analysis for Pennsylvania. Among 1,706 respondents, 556 said they never requested it. Of the 1,137 who did, 453 said they mailed it back, yet the state did not receive or count them. That is evidence of some kind of systemic problem. Now we need an investigation, a recount, an analysis. They won't do it. In Wisconsin, they're saying Trump's got to pony up like $8 million if he wants a recount. Okay, Matt, you really got to do Wisconsin? Because I think he is. He says it's coming out Wednesday. Because it should not be on Trump to pay for a recount if they find evidence that you screwed this up. And that's where things get freaky. But I don't know how many times it's got to be said. It is now the responsibility of the DOJ, of the proper authorities to do the investigation because the probable cause and the evidence is right in front of us. So no, we can't say there's widespread evidence because we haven't had an institutional investigation thus far. Matt says unreturned ABS calls for Georgia, Nevada, Michigan, Wisconsin, and AZ will be out of the field tomorrow night at the latest, results Wednesday. Initial tranche of GSG funds received from Stripe. So I think he issued a correction on the Nevada one, saying that Nevada is actually not involved. Minor error above. Nevada is not part of the unreturned analysis since they mailed ballots to everyone. He says loans are being prepaid. But this is big news. 453 people in a sample. It's a sample. OK, that's a little bit. What are we talking about? Just around a third or so. This is a sample of people. And they found a massive percentage of people who say their ballots weren't returned. How many people received absentee ballots in Pennsylvania? And what percentage can we then extrapolate? This is evidence of systematic failure in the PA election. Doesn't matter what I say. I'm just some dude on the internet complaining about his feelings. But at a certain point, shouldn't something be done about this? I don't know what you can do. I don't know what anyone would do about this because the powers that be will just be, and they're going to ignore it and say, too bad, Trump. Right now, Giuliani's arguing in Pennsylvania. They're not arguing on this stuff yet. We'll see how it plays out, but time is running out. Maybe at some point, Matt Brainerd finds more evidence of widespread systematic failure, and thus we can get an investigation, but it's right in front of us right now. He's saying it. There it is. Right there. Out of 1,137. I mean, honestly, It's more than a third if we exclude the people who say they didn't request their ballots. Of those who requested it, 453 mailed them back in, more than a third. So what's the failure rate then? Why is it that this time around they're saying we have the lowest margin of error for mail-in ballots and absentee ballots? Seriously, it's ridiculous. I'm like, we got all the news from the Democrat primaries about the 500,000 ballots were rejected or whatever. But this time it's fine? Something's wrong, isn't it? Ballots aren't being rejected? Some ballots were never received? It's almost pointless to bring up. The evidence staring us in the face, and nothing's being done about it. Matt says, an addendum to this analysis, 100% of the people in the sample are registered Republicans. And there were 165,000 Republicans in this universe that were mailed ABS, but were not marked as returning them. 165,000 Republicans were mailed absentee ballots, were marked as not returning them. All right, let's do a little bit of math. They say 1,706 respondents were sent absentee ballots. 556 said they never requested it, about a third. All right, let's go back over here and say about a third of this 165 didn't request it. So just around 50 plus thousand or so, not quite 60. Remove that. So we're dealing with what? Potentially 100,000 Republicans that have mailed in their ballots after requesting them. Okay, we'll go back into the other math. 453 said they hadn't mailed them back. So what are we looking at now? Are we looking at around a third, just more than a third, 35 to 40,000 ballots that may not have been returned or counted properly? Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to have an investigation to find out. We're not going to get one. There will be no meaningful analysis of this, in my opinion. Sorry if I'm being a bit pessimistic. I'm not saying don't try and don't fight, but maybe I'm just a bit jaded because the media just keeps saying no evidence over and over and over again. That's nuts to me. Buck Sexton. People who've been mocking Trump legal challenges in states like Georgia don't have a good answer for how 2,600 votes were suddenly found there that just happened to go 2-1 in favor of Trump 2 weeks after the election in a state with 13,300 ballot margin of victory. It's not over. President-elect Laura says, or this, Fulton County voting results in the last 4 elections. In 2008, Obama got 272 to McCain's 130. In 2012, he got 248 to Romney's 133. These are thousands. 2016, Clinton got 281 to Trump's 110. In 2020, Biden got 381 to Trump's 137. Biden received 100,000 more votes than any other candidate before him. Impossible. I don't think it's impossible. I think people really hate Trump, and they had a month to go around advocating for people to return in their to turn in their mail-in ballots. They gave themselves a huge advantage. I do think, however, that if we're dealing with these jurisdictions that these errors are being found, notably, it's a Democrat district where several votes should have been for Trump, and that could have changed the shape of the state, then we need to consider that in heavily Democrat districts, there may be Democrat impropriety, right? I mean, that's a simple thing to say. We're not going to get it. We're not. Okay, maybe we'll get it. I don't want to be too overly pessimistic. I guess demand of people action in this capacity. Note, like the Matt Braynard thing is what we need to be going after. This is the hard evidence. And I want to see him present it, lay out the documents, because this is the hard evidence of a systematic failure. My friends, I bring you this glorious tweet from Glenn Greenwald in response to Aaron Matei. Let me show Aaron Matei's first. The Mehdi Hassan show. In the world of social media with no gatekeepers, Dr. Vox says misinformation wins. And Aaron says liberals for gatekeepers. Glenn says, this is amazing, but not really. There is no more authoritarian species in the wild than U.S. liberals. In every controversy, they side with institutions of authority. They love the large corporate press, the FBI, CIA, workplace managers, editors. They worship and revere authority. Nobody, absolutely nobody, has done more to spread disinformation and deceive the public than large corporate media outlets. That's their function. This never used to be controversial on the left. Now they have liberal convinced they're the warriors against disinformation. They beg Facebook and Google and other tech giants to regulate our discourse. They think NBC News and CNN are devoted to combating disinformation and keeping us safe from propaganda. They beg for gatekeepers and discourse regulators. They are institutionalists and authoritarians. Yep. And that's the problem. So ultimately, it goes back to my previous segment on media and needing some kind of different space. Now, of course, Brian Stelter is panicking. He says, this is dangerous for our democracy, that other people might hear ideas outside of our CNN bubble. Yeah, well, guess what? Here's the good news. CNN is in dire straits. AT&T reportedly wants to sell them because they're $150 billion in debt, and CNN is a money pit. The golden goose of Donald Trump may be on the way out. And then what's CNN going to talk about? Oh, no, they're going to shrink. They're going to lay people off, and it will be the end. And it'll be their own fault. Because as the media space, channels like mine grow, there will be a thirst for real boring news. CNN gave up on it a long time ago. And that's it. Maybe eventually they'll burn out, and then we will get answers. Maybe people actually will take Matt Brainard's research seriously, and then, maybe something will be done about it. I don't know how much time Trump has left, so good luck to him. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all next time.